Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm excited to be here today with Ted Bunch from A Call to Men. Ted, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Shana. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy. We've been starting to talk and we realized we should press record. So there's so much we've been talking about, and, really excited to get into the topic today of healthy masculinity and challenging the status quo on manhood, both for men and for boys. And so most of the listeners here are men, but a lot of men, who are listening have children and have children who are boys or born male. We've been talking, we're going to talk about all of it, how to accept our children. And I think how to help the next generation also grow up without feeling as stuck in the man box as most of the men today often feel.
Yes.
So tell us something that, happened in your life that brought you to the work with A Call to Men, and maybe tell us a little bit about A Call to Men for men who don't know about it.
Thank you so much. So A Call to Men educates men all over the world around healthy and respectful manhood and preventing gender-based violence. Our vision is to create a world where all men and boys are loving and respectful, and all women and girls and those in the margins of the margins are valued and safe. So it's really around manhood. We know that as we promote and increase a healthy, respectful manhood, we prevent and decrease domestic violence, sexual assault, sexual harassment, bullying, homophobia, heterosexism. All of those things go away. And also men become healthier and happier, actually. And I hope we can talk a little bit about that too.
I love that, the healthier and happier. I have tears in my eyes just hearing, the clarity of your vision and how it aligns with what I want for the world as well.
Oh, well, thank you so much. This vision was actually born about 20 years ago by my friend, Tony Porter, who is we're still working together in the organization. We were working with domestic violence offenders, actually. I was running the largest domestic violence program in the country in New York City. About 600 men every week, 30 classes in English, 10 in Spanish. And Tony was doing similar work. And as we're doing this work, where we're trying to end violence against women, right? We're also working with women. It was really born out of the battered women's movement. So it was really women who helped educate us about how male domination plays out, right? That's really important, that we have the voice of women at the core of our work, and the voice of the LGBTQ trans community at the core of our work, because then we can know how to move forward in ways that are actually helpful and respectful. Imagine if we just did this as well-meaning men wanting to do the right thing, just did it alone, thinking that we didn't need to have any kind of input. So put it in racial terms. What if there were a wonderful group of white folks, well-meaning white folks, who said, we're going to end racism and we don't need to hear from anybody but white people? No, thank you.
It doesn't work. Well, okay, so here's one question I have is, most of the men I imagine who are listening to this podcast have the awareness that you have, right? And so they might be sitting here thinking, well, I'm not promoting violence, or I'm not, I'm not creating these things. Like, how do you bridge the gap to help those men understand why this is important for them?
Yeah, I'm sure that's true, because that's true in my experience also.
Yeah.
Is that while the overwhelming majority of violence and discrimination against women and girls and the queer community, while the overwhelming majority of violence, for instance, is done by men, the overwhelming majority of men are not violent, but we're silent about those that are.
Oh, silence about the violence.
And that is as much of the problem as the violence is. Actually, it might be more of the problem, because those men who do those things rely on us to be silent. So that if I'm in York, you're in California, in the Bay Area, I think, right?
Yeah.
I'm in New York, and all the places in between the coasts. If I'm right now in 2021, see a man hitting his wife or girlfriend, and I walk over to him, Shayna, and I say, knock it off, he's going to say to me, mind your business.
Yes.
That's our collective socialization. We've never talked about that, but all men know that. Well, that's based on male dominance, sexism, patriarchy, that men are in control, that women are the property of men. So yes, most of us don't do those things, but what is the thread through it all? And this is why it's really important with the work of A Call to Men. And if I could say, Shayna, before I move forward, this is an important point too.
Please.
That the conversation that we're entering, is not an indictment on manhood, but an invitation to men.
Oh, I like that.
It's not about calling men out. It's about calling men in. And that we've all been taught the same thing. Those men who do the things that we would never want men to do, sexual assault, domestic violence, any of those things, discrimination, all of those things, those men who do that have been taught the same thing that the majority of the men in your audience are, well-meaning men trying to do the right thing, living the right way. They've been taught the same thing. We've been taught we're swimming in the same water.
Yeah.
And by the way, we've inherited all of this.
Yes.
So no one's to blame.
Yeah.
Right? So, male privilege and white privilege, all those things are being said a lot in the last year or so, right?
Yeah.
But we've inherited it all. And we have it. I'm a man. I happen to be a black man, but I have male privilege. And I have it, Shayna, whether I want it or not. It operates for me whether I want it to or not.
Yeah.
So when we look at the collective socialization of men, that's all of us. We don't point the finger at this guy's bad, this guy's toxic. Masculinity and toxicity do not go together, right?
Yeah.
It's a sexy word. People know what you're talking about, but we don't like putting it there because what it does is really says that it allows the majority of us who don't do those things to opt out.
Yeah.
That it doesn't impact me. And it also allows us to start defining what's toxic and what's not. Because the rape, we might say, is toxic, but a lot of men are looking at that same woman who was raped and sexually objectifying her as she walks by. Right. Is that not toxic? Yeah. Right? Who gets to determine that? Yeah. So that collective socialization, there's three things that we're taught. If I can just wrap this up with this and I'll pass it back to you. Because once I start talking to you.
I know, it's interesting. I just am finding all these little questions I have in here. So,
please, go ahead.
No, tell me, you said the three pieces.
I just wanted to say the three things that we're all taught, that water that we're all swimming in. Yeah. There's three main things that all men are taught, that women and girls have less value than men and boys. Right? That's in our socialization. So I'll just give a quick example of how it's passed down. 6-year-old boy in your community or in my community or in the community of the men in your audience. Yeah. Learning how to throw a football. He's with his big brother, his uncle, his coach, his father. He's with this man who wants to really help this kid learn how to throw that football. And this kid adores him, right? Throwing the football, and dad, uncle, coach, big brother gets a little frustrated and said,
like,
look,
don't throw like a girl. You're throwing like a girl.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or he'll say, right. So you know the answer to that. Or he'll say something like, you got to throw harder than that. You throw like a, right?
Girl. Yeah.
Right. Now, that girls throw just fine. But what does that little boy, that 6-year-old boy, take away from that conversation? Does he take away that girls are equal to him or less than him?
Less than, for sure.
How can he not?
Well, and
we do that all the time.
Here's the interesting thing, because again, I keep thinking, I think there's something in me that stands up for men and stands up for the nice guys, right? And it's funny, I have some work to do on my own to look at like, why do I keep putting myself in this role? But I see, again, for the men who are silent but not committing violence, or for the men who are like, well, I don't even see people abusing other people. It's somewhere separate from me. But they are getting these lessons from a young age of don't throw like a girl and all of these things. Like I'm curious also for these men, I know they're impacted by the man box and by that sense, not just of girls being less than, but, oh, now I'm supposed to be tough and I'm supposed to be strong and I'm supposed to hold it in and not cry. I'm, all these things. So I want to just keep tying it into all of the different types of men who are listening.
Yes. So you bring up a great point, especially around the man box. And that's our short version. It's actually a term that Qualterman has coined, the man box, which is really a short version of that collective socialization of manhood. And just as you say, we're taught all kinds of things in order to live in this man box, right? Yeah. Be tough. You said it. Don't cry. Don't openly express feelings. Be in charge. Be in control. Don't ask for help. Don't be vulnerable, right? Because all of those things, showing your emotion, being vulnerable, asking for help, are not things that men do. And I'm putting that in quotes, right? Those are things that women and girls do. And if you're a man that does that, we will punish you by calling you something like a woman or a girl, or perhaps a gay man. And because this man box is a heterosexual construct.
Yes.
And the glue that keeps the man box together is homophobia and heterosexism.
Yeah.
So all of it, sift it all down, it all goes back to that collective socialization that the women and girls are less than. If you're doing anything like a woman and girl, like showing your emotion and being vulnerable, then you're less than a man.
Yeah.
So this man box also, when we tell that little boy to stop crying, we also tell him to stop feeling. He doesn't learn. So he doesn't learn language. He doesn't talk about what he's going through. He's not emotionally literate. We grew up to be men that only express that one emotion, and you mentioned it earlier, that anger. One emotion, which is anger.
Yeah.
But anger is covering up everything. We're in pain. Yeah. That's why suicide is 3.5 times higher with men than women. That's why anxiety and depression is out of the roof for men. That's why addiction, alcohol use, all of those things, and even with male youth, suicide is higher. Yeah. And then when you look at the LGBTQ, transgender, nonconforming youth, it's even higher because, again, they're punished and shamed even more because
they're not fitting
standards. Yes. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my TEDx talk, I don't know if you've seen it, was what 1,000 men's tears reveal about the crisis between men and women. And one of the stories that I talk about is walking down the hall in my kid's kindergarten. And this woman randomly told my son not to cry. And I almost punched her. It was just like, it took everything I had to not just be like, you're fucking up our world. This is the belief that has men grow up to be, right, you said, anxious and isolated and to commit suicide more often. So, right. So now I feel like, okay, we're bringing in, even just for, I don't know what to say, normal or, men who aren't committing these crimes, men who aren't necessarily seeing the abuse and the violence, that, right, they're still impacted as well, because that limitation on, oh, I can only express anger, their romantic relationships suffer, their careers suffer, their parenting and community life suffers. So yeah, it feels good to just, bring it all together.
Yeah. And let me just say, you had said something a little while ago about your appreciation for working with men and what they're going through and all that, because men are good.
Yes.
Right? Men are good. And that whatever it is, whatever negative behaviors or unhealthy behaviors, or those things that people would consider, again, I'm going to put in quotes, toxic, right, is not embedded in our DNA or in our testosterone. Yeah. It's embedded, those behaviors, the views of women, misogyny, sexism, it's embedded in our socialization.
Yes.
It's embedded how we're taught. So, and even when you say, the woman who said for your boy not to cry, I mean, we live 6 years less than women because we're dying from stress-related illnesses. That emotional stress that we never release literally turns itself into this manifestation of physical stress and kills us as we get older, right? And in addition to that, we tend to not go to the doctor when we need to because that shows vulnerability, and that means we ask for help. So we're not going to prevent anything. It's always generally intervention, right? And we also tend to do more high-risk behavior because one of the ways you prove that you're a man is to do high-risk behaviors in this man box that's built on a lie. So those emotions that we shut down for our boys are really important to express. And let me make clear to the dads who are out there saying, listen, my son's not going to be a this and my son's not going to be a that. He's going to, be tough. Well, he can still build that strength that we want and also share his emotions. Actually, he can do it. It actually will make him stronger.
Right. That's my perspective, right?
Yeah. It'll definitely make him stronger. So it doesn't mean if my kid's facing a fear and he's crying about it, let's say, right? I'm not saying to him, okay, cry all you want. You don't have to face your fear. We'll do something else another time. No, you're going to face your fear, but I'm going to acknowledge that the fear is real.
Yes.
And I'm not going to demean you for having the fear or for crying. And I'm actually going to share with you that I have fear too.
I love
and that when I share my fear, whenever I face it, I feel better for facing it. Even if it doesn't result in what I wanted to result in, what at least has been achieved is that I faced my fear, and that's what I'm going to expect you to do, and I'm going to help you face it.
Oh, brilliant. And I love how you just turned that into, well, it wasn't even a turning it into, it was the whole picture of fear is okay. I also feel fear, so you don't have to feel like you're alone. And I'm going to help you walk through this. And it takes strength to walk through this, right? That connection between the vulnerability and the strength, that they're both important, or vulnerability actually is a strength as opposed to a weakness.
It absolutely is a strength. And, one of the things that I really appreciate in the last year or two, you've really seen some male influencers like Michael Phelps, who's talking about going to therapy and the importance of mental health.
Depression.
Right? Really important, right? Because it's not a sign of weakness. I think about there's a number of other athletes who do it. Kevin Love, who's a basketball player, does it. If you have the Calm app, LeBron James is on the Calm app talking about, peace and serenity and calming your mind. Like, this is really important. As men, we need these tools, and it's not a weakness. And we're not trying to make our boys, we're not trying to take anything away from masculinity, but we're so much more.
Yes. It's hard to find a way to say that in a way that's not demeaning, right? It's like, we're not trying to make our boys sissies, or all those words that we've been taught and enculturated are all demeaning. So I love that you switched that into, we're not trying to take anything away. We're actually adding these tools and skills to make more healthy, happy men and boys. Right.
And we're recognizing that those things that we've been taught that have value as being men, women have as well.
Yeah.
So be a provider. I want to be a provider for my family. That's important to me. I want to be a protector for my family. That's important to me. I want to have strength. That's important to me. But women have all those things too.
Yeah.
I bet if I took a poll of your male audience and asked them, okay, let's look at strength. Take away the ability of how much you can lift, like how much you can bench press.
Physically, physical
strength. And look at all the other characteristics of strength. Do you know more strong women or strong men?
Interesting.
Whenever I ask men that, and I'm with professional football players and I ask them, they'll say strong women.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Strong women, right. And if we're going to look at the physical ability, let's look at the physical ability.
Right. Let's look at carrying babies and giving birth.
Right. Create life, give life, birth. Now, how much do you bench press, my man?
Yeah.
What was that, bro?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, part of what I love too is that you have been using the call to men work and bringing it into the younger generations. And you wrote this book called Book of Dares, 100 Ways for Boys to Be Kind, Bold, and Brave, and co-wrote it with Anna Marie Johnson. I don't want to leave her out of the picture. And one of the things that I thought was beautiful that I read was that the book has been called a direct answer to parents' cries for building healthy masculinity, respect, and emotional literacy in their sons. And I felt really excited having a child seeing this book. And I'm curious, what inspired you to write it? and to start to bring this into the lives of youth.
Thank you for that. We're really excited about the book. And as you said, it was written by myself and Anna Marie Johnson-Teague. And she and I are friends and anti-violence educators and also parents. And we happen to work for an organization, A Call to Men. And this is really the book of Dares is for male-identified youth, really we wrote it for 8 to 13-year-old boys, but since it's been out, we have high school boys who have been really excited about it. And we have girls and gender nonconforming kids who are finding dares that can really resonate with them as well. And I'll talk about what the focus of those dares are. Yeah. But it's really built on the work of A Call to Men and promoting healthy manhood. That's really what it's about. Yep. So we surveyed boys, about 1,000 boys from around the country, about different topics. And we did this because we found that in the market for children's books, there's a big gap for boys of any books that focus on empathy, authenticity, or health. Very few books. Girls, there's a lot more to choose from. With boys, there's very little to choose from. Yeah. And we had already written a high school and middle school curriculum with Scholastic, actually, called Live Respect, right? Coaching Healthy and Respectful Manhood, which goes from 6th grade to 12th. And there's some colleges using it also. And we just wanted to go earlier because the socialization starts so earlier. By the time these kids are in middle school, they already have these preconceived notions.
Right. Then you have to work to kind of unravel them.
Right. Mm-hmm. So we really wanted to get it a little bit earlier. So the Book of Dares is, as you said, 100 ways for boys to be kind, bold, and brave. And there are dares that are focused in like 3 buckets. Healthy masculinity, right? For instance, one of the dares is share 3 emotions you experience today. Dare you to share 3 emotions you experience today, right?
Awesome.
A lot of men can't do that, right? But it helps them to think about, what did I experience? Joy, sadness, I was discouraged because of this or that, right? So now it's opening a door to talk about some things.
Yes.
Right? Authenticity. So
second bucket is authenticity.
Right, second bucket, authenticity. So it's really about encouraging them to tap into who they are. Right? What else is there, right? Is there, you're playing football, dare you to take on a sport that you've wanted to, but you've been afraid to.
Oh, right? I love that one. Because I've been talking with a lot of people recently around that. I did another podcast where we were talking about that inclination to stay away from anything that you're not good at or that you don't know how to do because, it doesn't look manly to be struggling or not know how to do it. And I see it with my kid too at this young age.
Yeah. Same thing. That's exactly where we're coming from, right? And then also on gender equity and inclusion is the other bucket, right? So when we look at the issues of race and gender, that's, really an awakening that's happened in our country, where this is part of the national conversation now. Dares that really allow parents to have conversations with their kids around these things in very non-threatening and actually fun ways, right? Boys, out of those 1,000 boys we interviewed, they admitted that, wow, we're terrified about dares, but fascinated about dares. So we
I can see where it plays into the male psyche, right? Of like, it's not like I'm going to create a book on empathy for boys and call it, lovey-dovey. It's like, I dare you to be more empathetic.
Yes, exactly. So it's really positive challenges, but those are dares.
Yeah.
So, and then the other bucket is, as I said, gender equity and inclusion. So there's a dare, for instance, that is one about pay, right? Where there's a story about, there's 2 kids who are in the same household. One's a boy and one's a girl. They're about the same age. The girl does dishes for a week and the boy does dishes for a week. They both do a fantastic job. Yeah. But at the end of the week, the girl gets $30 and the boy gets 27.
Oh, interesting.
And he's looking at it like, wait a minute, there's something wrong here, right? Yeah. So there's a lesson in that. When people get the book, they can read more about that dare, but it's really around, pay equity and gender equity. Like, is that fair or not? And of course, the boy sees how unfair that is. And then there's also, another one that's coming to mind is around wear your favorite female athlete's jersey to school. Now, this was done when we were writing the book. The United States women's soccer team had just won the World Cup. Yeah. Everybody, all these kids, a lot of soccer players were excited about that. And we were like, well, would you wear one of the players' jerseys?
What'd they say?
I dare you. And they loved it. And, WNBA players, there's other things that, there's other players, female athletes, because it's not about gender, it's about their athleticism and
Right.
and their success.
Yeah.
So there's lessons in that. And then there's also lots around inclusion. And there's one, for instance, dare to prove a stereotype wrong. Right?
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Dare to, we were talking a little bit earlier, dare to ask your parents to take you to a pride event.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah,
well, I'm also seeing the beauty and the importance of community, where it would be so different for one parent. I mean, it's great, right, for a parent to buy this book for their kid, but their kid then goes into a community and doing this on their own is really different than, say, the whole class is actually working with the Book of Dares. So how do you, expand from parent to actually making this more communal?
Well, we're trying to, and having conversations like this and you using your platform to elevate the book and our work is really appreciated. So there's a few dares that actually have the reader go to friends and do some things.
Great.
There's one dare that comes to mind that says, dare to ask a friend to teach you something they're good at. Nice. Right? Dare to start a group, like a FaceTime group with your friends because they're on playing Fortnite and everything else, right? Yes. Dare to and to discuss the dares in this book. And so what we've seen is that there's been young folks who have emailed us or hit us up on social media, or their parents have, that they're buying it for their friends so they can do things together.
Awesome. That's so great. That's so great.
We're hoping to get it in schools, and we'd love to have it as curriculum in schools. Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. What are you most excited about the book and what could happen with it?
Well, I'm excited that we're teaching our boys empathy and seeing outside of themselves and how we impact others. There's also one around privilege, right? Dare to see what your privilege is, right? And that might be class, it might be race, it might be religion, as far as, that more doors open to you than other people of different religions, those kind of things. So it really challenges in a very loving and fun way. So we're excited that we can we start preventing early on, because this is really, these things give boys language and access to themselves in ways that there's even one around meditation, I think, about find some calm time. There's one dare to start a journal.
Right.
So that we're really preventing, I love being a man. I have 6 children, 4 of them are male and 2 are female. I have 2 that one's gay and one's lesbian. So I have and they're multiracial as well. There's 2 children that are white. I have 4 children that are black. So this is really important that we help our kids to be the healthiest that they can be. Yeah. And so what this really prevents, all those things we talked about earlier that men experience as adults, living 6 years earlier, anxiety, depression,
suicide.
Yes, suicide. This is going to prevent that because it really helps boys start to identify how they're feeling. They don't have to hold it in. I can start talking now instead of when I'm 40 in therapy.
Right. Right. I mean, my clients, who are men in their 40s and 50s are like, God, I wish I had known this in my teens and 20s and 30s.
Right. And wouldn't it have been great to not only know it, but to be able to share that with a man in your life?
Yes.
How nurturing would that be? Because there's so much, women do so much and fill so much in our lives. And fathers and dads, men are doing so much also. But the construct is that men are supposed to go out and do this, women are supposed to do this, and the vulnerability, the nurturing place is not where men are encouraged to be with their boys. Yeah. Take them to the football game,
Yeah, and yet I really do see in this day and age so many men who are the nurturers or, also nurturers, and it's amazing to watch my male friends with their kids. And I'm curious, as a father, what would you say, what's one of the most important things that you've learned that has helped your children grow up to be who they are, to be free to be who they are?
I would say, well, before I go there, if I could say the nurturing piece that you just mentioned, it's so important, and that men do it so well, and it's in us. We've just never been allowed to do it. Yeah. And when we have done it, we've been punished for it or laughed at or ridiculed by other men and actually some women, because they're socialized.
Yeah, women are guilty of that as well.
Right, that you're not man enough that you're falling short, that's what women do.
Yeah.
And that our kids need that so much from us.
Yeah.
And by the way, our kids also, as they grow, to your male audience out there, we need to talk to them about boundaries and consent.
Yes,
and
for sure.
the bodies of girls and women. Really important, because we're taught to sexually objectify women, and we pass that down to our boys.
Yeah.
That's part of that collective socialization. But as a father, I think the most important thing that I think the impact that I see making a difference, I hope makes a difference with my children, is that when I'm wrong, I really try to admit that.
Yeah.
I might need to step away for a second.
Right. Take a breather.
I might, because they're not in charge of me, okay?
Yeah.
But I might need to step away for a second, but then I'll come back and really own what if there's anything that needs to be owned, or if I didn't take the time because I'm frustrated at maybe what one of my kids did, and they want to explain it, and I'm like, I don't want to hear it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we've talked about this before, right? Yeah. And I might need to come back and say, I need to hear it.
Right.
And I was frustrated because of X, Y, and Z, sharing my emotions, right? And then to be open to hear what they have to say, and to be mutual with seeing them, really respecting them as a person, and not feeling like I need to control them. I think that is really an important thing.
That's a huge one that we could a nugget of gold you just dropped in there, right?
And the way that they see me interact with their mother.
Yeah.
Right. That's very important. And I'll share with the audience, because it's mostly men. And this is important because, as I said, I have 6 children, 3 biological, 3 adopted. And I don't usually share this, but because there's men on the call, I want to, because things don't always work out perfectly. So I was married 20 years and got divorced about 8 years ago. My biological children's mother and I are best of friends. We get along wonderfully. It's like we do things together even now, and she's in a relationship and I'm in a relationship. Yeah. We adopted one of the kids. They're teenagers that came into our life, the other 3. Yeah. We adopted one of them 2 years after our divorce.
After you got divorced? Wow. I've never heard of that before. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, we were like, well, we're raising this kid. They're the same age.
Might as well raise this one too.
Might as well raise this one too. Like, amazing. Why not?
Amazing.
Yeah. So I don't say that. I just say that, if we go through the lens of love as men and really put down some of the ego and how we want to control things and just work to be mutual with whoever that is, whether it's our kids or with our current partner or with our former partner, like, there's really hope. Like, we can do this. Like, love is the answer to all things.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much. What do you want to leave men with, if there was one last thing that feels important?
That I have a lot of hope for men, and there's a lot of healing that we have to do. Yeah. There's a lot of trauma that men experience, not only living in this man box, but also the trauma we experience that we don't get to share because the man box says that we can't. Okay. So when I think about boys, for instance, there's at least the statistics say that it's 1 in 6 adult men have had unwanted sexual experiences as children.
Yes.
Right? Which really means 1 in 6 boys
have been sexually abused.
I think it's more than that.
Yeah.
And we don't share that, and we carry that pain all the time. So when we see addiction and trauma and other things and risky behaviors, like, if we trace that back, we can find some pain there. And then even the hurt that men cause, hurt people.
Exactly.
Right? And I just want to share one last thing that really resonated with me is that a friend of mine, Joe Ehrman, he's a former football player. He's a pastor and a coach and also a motivational speaker. He's an amazing man. And Joe, years ago, when I first met him, I heard him say this, and it resonated with me. He said, "I have a hole in my soul shaped like my father."
Wow. Whew.
Yeah. And I was like, ooh, I have that. I was like raising my hand. Yeah. I wasn't literally raising my hand, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, you get it.
Yes.
And so when I heard that, I was like, I don't want my kid to have a hole in their soul shaped like me.
Right.
And that's really what I work toward. Like, I want to fill whatever holes they have, not create them.
So beautiful, right? For the fathers listening to actually know that it's okay, that part of filling that hole is your own vulnerability of admitting, oh, I wasn't my best here, or I am feeling these emotions, or right. It can seem like, I think in the man box, the role of father is I'm tough, I'm strong, and I teach my kids to be tough and strong, or my boys especially to be tough and strong. But when you really get that you can open up and be all of you and invite all of your children, I mean, wow, the freedom in that and the healing that happens is incredible.
You're right, Shana. And being tough and strong is great, but we're much more than that too. Yeah. There's so much more, and we're missing out on it. So it stops us from being our authentic selves.
Yeah.
Can I share one story about authenticity?
Please.
Okay. All right. So, and I'll tie in my son being gay, because I know there's some fathers on the phone who have kids who are maybe questioning, who may be presenting in a way that they're uncomfortable with around their gender or their sexuality. And I want the men to know there's nothing to be afraid of. Mm-hmm. And that what we want to do is love them so that they come to us with whatever their issues are, however they identify. Yeah. And so we really want to really challenge the ways that we think about gender. Yeah. So my now 18-year-old was 15 when he came out, and we expected him to come out. And expected is different than suspected.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We were awaiting him to come out. We didn't, right?
Beautiful.
Right? We were expecting him when he was very young. If there were girls were on one side of the room, he's crawling to the girl. They fascinated him much more so than the boys did. Yeah. So he's taught me a lot about authenticity. Mm-hmm. And by the way, let me also own that with all as prepared as I thought I was as a father, and as woke as I thought I was as a father, and as ready as I thought I was for him to come out, I was ready to celebrate him. I mean, I wanted to have a coming out party, right?
Yes.
When he did come out and fully embrace himself, because he was questioning, even though I wasn't questioning, he still questioned.
He was still questioning, right?
Because most kids in that situation are trying not to be.
Right. They're trying to fit into the box, the culture.
Like, what's going on with me? Why? Right. So when he did come out and embrace his fullness and blossomed, there were things that, there weren't a lot, but there were a number of things that came up that
for you.
I had to pause. I had to say, okay, take a breath here. I wasn't ready for. And I had judgment about. And that was my heterosexism and my homophobia. Right. So I'm not cooked. So all these things I'm saying, even when it relates to women, sexism still creeps into my mind. But the difference is I'm anti-sexist, because when it does, I address it.
Right. You're aware of it. You address it.
That's the difference. Even with racism. Okay, you're not racist. Okay, but do you know that you benefit from racism? Yes. Okay, well, then are you anti-racist, meaning that you stand up against it? And if you don't stand up against it, then what are you?
That's a powerful distinction.
Right. So same thing with sexism. So with authenticity, I just want to share this with the men, because as you see over my shoulder here, you see a bouquet of flowers, right?
Yes. Okay.
So I was married for 10 years probably, and I would bring flowers home about every week, every other week for my wife. And, she would appreciate it. And if her girlfriends were over, they'd be like, oh, your husband, he's so good. He's still giving you flowers, girl. Okay, good, right? All that, right? But if I didn't bring them home, she wasn't asking where are the flowers. Yeah. Right? So about 10 years in, I'm realizing, she doesn't care if I bring these flowers home or not, but I like them. Uh-huh. So it was always about me and flowers. Right? But I brought it in as a gift to her, because women are supposed to like flowers, not men. Right. And then, right. But the fact of the matter is, I like the way
you actually really like them.
Right. Yeah. I like the way the colors. I like the way they smell when they come in the house. All of those things. So when I started embracing that, now I'm going to the florist and I'm much more intentional about the flowers.
And picking them out for what you actually enjoy.
Yes,
I love that.
The color combination I want. Oh, I don't need a vase, because I'll arrange them at home. You know why, Shana? Because I like flowers.
Because you're like arranging flowers. I love it.
There's men that are not doing all kinds of things because they've been told that's not what men do. Yeah. And we're missing out on life.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for all the work you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Shana. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144, or head over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.